Hello, everybody. A couple of weeks ago, we had the great environmentalist Bill McKibben on the show. He's become slightly more optimistic about the future of the climate. He suggests that if we can move fast, we might indeed be able to fix the world through solar energy. His new book is called Here Comes the Sun. He calls it a last chance for the climate and a fresh chance for civilization. And one of the towns that he's particularly excited with is Paris. Paris recently, earlier this year, said, at least according to the Washington Post, au revoir to cars, no more cars in Paris. My guest today also is looking at cars as a way of perhaps saving the planet. His new book is called Saving Ourselves from Big Car. David Obst is quite a character, done many things in his life. He's speaking to us now from Santa Barbara in California, where he lives. David, as I noted, I'm not sure if you're familiar with McKibben's new book, Here Comes the Sun.
No, I'm
Are you
not.
against all cars or just gasoline-powered cars?
Well, unfortunately, kind of all cars, because... Well, let me give you a little background of how I got into this. Is I was with my granddaughter in Los Angeles, where I grew up, and we were in a traffic jam, and I said, I hate traffic. And she looked at me, smiled, and said, Pop, you are the traffic. And I realized she was right. And this is 4 years ago. And so for the last 4 years, I've been looking into how did we get into this.
And just to be clear, what she meant was you're not the problem. You're just the problem when you're sitting in a car in a traffic jam.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, Americans lose an amazing amount of time each year sitting in traffic. 30% of all gasoline that's burned each year is by people looking for parking places. The statistics are remarkable. And so what I did was I used to be a pretty good investigative reporter. I worked with a number of the top people in the field, including Seymour Hersh, who was chief investigative reporter for the New York Times. And before he took that job, he and I broke the My Lai massacre story together and won the Pulitzer Prize. I was also Woodward and Bernstein's agents for All the President's Men and a number of other journalists. So I've been around journalism my whole life, and I know how it works. So I decided I was going to try and find out, how did our species get into this conundrum? I'll give you just a quick minute and a half explanation. Is at the beginning, in my book, I give a cursory history of transportation, and I take it up to the year 1900. Can you know what the biggest problem was in urban America in the year 1900? If you lived in New York or San Francisco or any
horses, I'm guessing.
Dangerous
horses.
Very good, very good. Most people don't know that. It was horses. In New York City alone, 130,000 horses a day came into the city, each of them leaving 24 pounds of manure and 12 gallons of urine. And the cities became impossible. So we invented the car. The first car.
I don't think, I mean, to be clear, David, I don't think we invented the car because of horsemen. We invented it because, for better or worse, it's a more efficient way of traveling around, faster, maybe not more efficient in the long term of the planet, but it wasn't a reaction to horses, was it?
The history of the period shows that one of the most compelling forces to getting alternatives to horses in the city was finding other means of transportation. And we found others besides the car, of course. We had trolleys, we had trams, we had a lot of different ways of people getting.
Yeah, and isn't that really the important narrative in all this? And maybe this is what distinguishes the US in particular from the rest of the world, is what we already had was trains that had already revolutionized the West, revolutionized most of the industrial world. So trains and cars, they may sometimes go together. We drive to the train station, but they're ultimately alternative models for travel. Is that correct?
Very much so, and complemented each other for a while. The problem was, after experiments with electric cars and external combustion engines, steam, the internal combustion engine prevails. And Henry Ford, in particular, figures out a way of putting it on assembly lines so that the Model T becomes the car in America for many, many years.
And it's also, and Henry Ford and his startup at the time, it became a model for all the efficiencies and contradictions in American capitalism.
Which is what my book is about. Because the internal combustion engine does not burn gasoline cleanly. And you're old enough to remember cars backfiring and the horrific sounds and big puffs of smoke that would come out. Well,
you got a picture of one of those on your on the cover of your book, Saving Ourselves from Big Car.
In 1927, the Ethel Corporation is formed by Standard Oil, DuPont, and General Motors. 3 giant companies. They come up with an additive to put into gasoline that allows cars to burn cleaner and smoother. That additive is lead. For the next 70 years, we spewed so much lead into the atmosphere that it is responsible, according to the World Health Organization, of killing more people than World War II.
So are you suggesting that the oil industry, big oil, and that's a term, and I've never actually heard the term big car before, but I certainly heard big oil. The big oil is responsible for all these deaths?
I'm sorry. Big car is big oil, big auto, big lobbyists, big asphalt, all of the component parts that make up the automobile industry.
And actually, one of the interesting pieces of the conversation with McKibben, I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at it, was that he sees the opposition to solar power in terms of the conventional oil industry and, of course, auto industry. So for him, I'm not sure if he uses the term big car, but he certainly, I think, is in.
No, I had not seen big car used before, but it seemed like a pretty good catch-all for putting all of these people together. Anyway, very quickly, the Ethel Corporation comes up with putting lead into gasoline. This is very apropos for what's happening today because they were so powerful, these 3 companies, in their lobbying capabilities and others, that they were able to keep the statistics of the effect of lead on human beings secret for over 70 years. No scientist, no institution, nobody.
So is this the point of your book? Because lots of books have been written against the car, David. Is this what you're saying? Have other people said this? That
no,
this
I've
industry is very secretive?
I've not seen that anybody accused Big Car of killing more people than the Nazis and communism.
I'm surprised that next time you go out in Santa Barbara, you won't get run over by one of these people. If indeed what you're saying is true. How does it fit into the traditional critique of the car industry? As you note, you were around in the 60s. You're all too familiar with Ralph Nader. He's been on the show a couple of times. A very interesting, articulate man. Had an enormous influence in his critique on the car industry. Are you continuing in the footsteps, not literally footsteps of Ralph Nader? I don't think he still drives. He certainly doesn't carry a smartphone.
It's more in the footsteps of somebody like Rachel Carson, who did Silent Spring. And when Rachel Carson did Silent Spring, which was an expose on DDT, a pesticide.
When was that? 64, 63?
Yes, exactly. Very good. She was tremendously beat up by big chemistry, and they tried to silence her, but she ultimately prevailed because her science was really clear. The same happens with Big Car. For 70 years, they are able to put as much lead as they want into gasoline, and the result is countless deaths. If you look again, one nice thing about writing this book for the Columbia School of Business Press is they don't let you opine. They don't let you just say what you think. You have to have hard statistics to back up everything. So I have in the book the hard statistics from the World Health Organization, from Duke Medical School, from a number of other reputable.
Yeah, no, I'm sure what you're saying, David, is substantial. But let's get back to the point about electric vehicles. If what you're saying, if your core argument is that traditional cars spew poison into the atmosphere, lead poison, which kills millions of people, which may or may not be true, why not just go to electric vehicles?
Well, it is true.
Well, I'm sure it is, but then what's wrong with electric vehicles? Aren't they solutions?
Electric
People still need to get around.
Run with batteries that are powered by lead.
So electric vehicles, in your mind, are no better than gas-powered cars?
Well, not right now, unless they change their battery components. The horrific fire that we had here in Southern California and the Palisades, one of the biggest problems is there were so many Teslas there that blew up, and the amount of lead pollution as a result of that that's gone into the area and into the landfills is a big problem we're going to have to deal with. And today in the world, countries that are building lead batteries and such are killing their populations at the rate, according to the World Health Organization, again, of 1,300,000 people will
so
die.
There's okay, so I take your point, David. Maybe gas and even electric cars are not great for, certainly not for the environment, and certainly not for us breathing the air. But a lot of people are going to say, well, how are we going to get around? America has struggled. Hold on, let me finish. America, lots of books have been written recently about the failure of America, for example, to build high-speed rail connections in California, where you live, between where you are, Santa Barbara and San Francisco. I think about 20 kilometers have been built. The Chinese have been enormously successful. So is that the alternative? Because people still need to get around.
There is one alternative. The last chapter of my book is I take 10 communities throughout the world who have managed to get rid of private automobiles in their communities successfully. And I show how they did it.
So these are car-free cities, right?
Yes.
Rather like Paris. And I know one of the other cities you talk about is Tempe, which is quite a
Yes,
story.
yes.
Tell us about Tempe.
Tempe has a community now that's grown from nobody to over it's almost 8,000 people. And it just doesn't allow you to have a car if you live there, but you don't need to because you have where you live, you have restaurants, you have all the places you need to shop. And if you need to take public transport, there's plenty available to go into Phoenix and other places. So,
This is in Tempe, Arizona.
yes, that's one. A better example is Taipei in Taiwan. Taipei in Taiwan has shifted over to bicycles basically as a chief means of transportation. And it's working very well for them. You now have millions and millions of bicycles in the city. And
Right, so Taipei is the sort of the Copenhagen, shall we say, of Southeast Asia.
yes, Copenhagen, very good.
But Taiwan and Denmark are very small countries, for better or worse. We always, on this show, talk about how America can't become like Denmark, even if we want it to. America is a huge country. So I take your point on Tempe. But most people either don't want to or can't live in cities like Tempe. In fact, I'm guessing Tempe is relatively expensive.
I understand that. But one of the things I'm doing here in Santa Barbara with our municipal government and our university, UCSB, and our Metropolitan Transit Authority is we're carving out small sections of the city at a time to make them private car free so that you can get around without having a private car to do everything you need during the day. Helsinki, Finland piloted this idea. There's a movement called Mobility as a Service, MAS, MAAS, which has spread throughout the globe. And a lot of smart people are part of this. These people are all finding each other and coming up with examples. No, we're not going to get rid of the car overnight, just as we are not able to get rid of any addiction very quickly. And the car is an addiction in the sense that everyone says, I don't really need it. I can stop anytime I want. But that's not true. We're all stuck with cars, including myself. Okay? But we must find alternatives. And we have to find these alternatives in a fairly short window, or the amount of pollutants and particulates that these cars are putting out will end our species.
What about the Chinese model of high-speed train? As I said, California has failed miserably in its development, and a lot of people argue, we've done whole shows on this, it's bound up with the abundance arguments, people like Ezra Klein, that there are too many local laws in the United States, and it's too easy to say no. And in fact, one of the arguments makes Ralph Nader a villain of this, in this sort of legalization of America, an American infrastructure, which means you can never build anything. Is the Chinese model, David, sort of reform from above, massive investment in high-speed rail? Is that another model that maybe Americans
that's
can use?
one possible solution. And, you know, high-speed rail in California got hijacked by politicians in Sacramento who turned it into cash cows for their own particular districts and cells, so that only, as you mentioned, 20 miles or so are built, and those miles don't go to anywhere where we need. Eventually, yes, we can follow the Chinese model, the Finnish model, and others to begin putting together mass transportation systems that people can use besides their private car. We're not going to have a choice. I mean, on the same day that the new head of the Environmental Protection Agency announced that they were going to cut back on so many of the things that we need to protect us, The first four lead stories on NBC Nightly News were about climate change disasters. It's not a coincidence.
I'm not sure, though, David, and I agree with you, but I'm not sure most Americans do. I mean, they just voted for a president who basically made the argument, not basically, clearly made the argument. He thought most of the environmental concerns are inventions or lies or environmental self-interest of one kind or another.
But that's not true. And
I understand it's not true,
but you have to understand.
Yeah, but people still voted for that president, and now, and again, some people might be listening to this and thinking, I like my car. Why should I stop driving? I love driving. It's a huge country. I love driving around Arizona or California. I love road trips. I like driving right across the country from the west to the east coast. What's wrong with that?
We all do. We all are addicted to it. But if we don't stop,
well, that's not addiction. That's just enjoyment. You're using
it's an addiction, just like any other addiction is. We haven't looked at alternatives. Okay, until
an addiction, David, is a drug, isn't it? Are you suggesting that cars are drugs?
An addiction is a habit that you can't break free of.
Because it's a drug?
No, because it's something that your system needs to make you feel okay. And it doesn't have to be a drug. There's, pyromaniacs are addicted to watching fires. It's not a drug. It's also not as big a problem as this. But let me get back to the central issue, which is that the first third of my book is about how Big Car was able to win us all over, including myself, to wanting to have cars. And it's very clever the way they did it. Anytime there was an obstacle, for example, in the 1930s, countless children were being killed by automobiles. And so what Big Car does, they invent jaywalking, which hadn't existed before. And they get the Boy Scouts of America to work with them. And so we're taught as a people to not cross the street except at certain places, etc. Then that doesn't work. And so Big Car comes up with their next big idea, which is make the streets wider and more accessible for cars only. And so we get rid of anything that impedes.
But you needed politicians. I mean, Eisenhower built the highway system. I take your argument, although it sounds slightly conspiratorial. It's in the cars. Hold on, it's in the car. Like any industry, every industry wants to pursue its own interests, whether it's big car or big tech or big pharma or the airlines. Everyone wants to pursue their own interests. People aren't that stupid, are they, that they let big car or big tech do anything they want? I mean, I've had lots of shows about big tech too, and we're told that
they are. Ken, listen to me. They are. And if you let them, so for example, Big Car knew about seatbelts 40 years before they put them into automobiles.
Yeah, and Nader addressed that. Nader was very influential in revealing that and fighting.
Yeah, actually, he wasn't.
He wasn't? No. Isn't his unsafe at any speed?
No, unsafe at any speed was about how the Corvair was poorly built, and they covered up the. And I'm very good friends with Ralph. I've known him for years, and because of the spying they did on him, he got several $100,000 from General Motors, which enabled him to put together Nader's Raiders, but he never did anything else on cars after that. He went into various other, and he hasn't since, unsafe at any speed, done anything on cars.
Are you saying that he was bought off by the industry?
No, I didn't say he was bought off. He had other interests. And also, look, why has no other investigative reporter come up with the fact that more people were killed by big car than World War II.
Is that because the car industry
that's
is
not a hidden statistic. That's been out there for years.
So you're saying that big car controls the media so tightly that no one would dare say that, even if the data's out there?
I don't say they control the media, but they run the media. A full-page ad by Big Car in the New York Times costs close to $85,000. An obituary in the Times about someone killed by a car costs $55.
So are you saying that the editors of the Times won't publish critiques of big car because the oil industry will stop advertising?
Exactly.
It sounds a little conspiratorial, David. Is that really how the world
works? Read the book, because I have example. Let me give you the best example, which is in the book. It not only is conspiratorial, it was well planned, thought out, and brilliantly executed. Okay, so
who's the mastermind of all this then?
Okay, but if you read the book, you'll find there's a character named Dr. Claire Patterson, who is a professor at Caltech, right? In the 1970s, Patterson, who is a geologist and would have won the Nobel Prize if they had such a thing in geology, because he came up with how to carbon date rocks so that we knew how old the Earth was, began to see that all of his samples were polluted. He went to various magazines in the field of science. They wouldn't touch it. He went to Caltech.
She went, right?
He.
Oh, she.
It's a man.
So you're saying that no one would touch it because it was too dangerous?
Well, it was worse. Hear me out. The Ethel Corporation has 2 members on the board at Caltech. They come to Caltech and they make Claire Patterson an offer of 3 times his current salary and as big a lab as he wants if he'll just do one thing: stop talking about lead. He says no. Caltech can't fire him because he's a tenured professor, but they send him up on sabbatical to Yosemite for 3 years, where he basically is exiled, gets no research money, and can't do a thing about talking about big car. In 1969, in Santa Barbara, there's a horrific oil spill. You may remember it. Richard Nixon comes to Santa Barbara, walks along the coast, and says, "We've got to do something like this." And he puts together the Environmental Protection Agency. You can win a lot of bar bets by betting which president did that. Nobody would guess Nixon. Okay.
Well, I think some people would, but get to your point, David.
My point is that in 1970, the Clean Air Act is passed. Okay. It says that cars have to have catalytic converters placed in them by 1975. The Ethel Corporation and other people are not too worried about this because the catalytic converter hasn't been invented yet. You're old enough to remember gas stations that sold leaded and
so yeah, okay, but what's your point?
My point is that what finally stops lead for being so pernicious in at least America is that lead kills catalytic converters. So every new car began to die in the gas station. They changed the nozzles on gasoline pumps so that you can't put leaded gasoline into a new car anymore. And eventually, the Ethel Corporation shifts all of its Ethyl Corporation gasoline to Southeast Asia, South America, and others, so that we didn't have to do it.
Yeah, I take your point, but you could make the same argument about big tobacco. You could make the same argument about the military-industrial complex. We do lots of shows on this. It's just the nature of things. Big car was interested in its own self-interest, but the idea that it's somehow some massive conspiracy that's destroyed America sounds slightly far-fetched. Let's get to the present. But it's
not far-fetched.
It sounds to me far-fetched. David, let's get to the. I take your point, and people will, of course, read the book.
Just last point, and then I'll stop harping on this. They have Senate hearings on the effect of lead in 1971. Okay, Claire Patterson is not allowed to testify. Senator Edmund Muskie and Stuart Udall testify. The Senate, the people who are supposed to protect us, the Department of Transportation, say, we're going to take all of the data that the Ethyl Corporation is giving us, and we're going to believe it. And Ethyl got to run another 5 years. Now, here's a couple of reasons.
Yeah, and this is beginning to get on my nerves, David. You're falling back 60 years ago. You're coming up with these peculiar conspiracy theories. Let's get to the present.
It's not a peculiar conspiracy.
It is to me. Let me finish, because we got to finish here if you want to end this show coherently. We're at a point now where we have self-driving cars in San Francisco, electric vehicles. Are you suggesting still, I mean, what's your take on self-driving cars? That seems to be another way of making cities more habitable. Maybe it's not quite Tempe or Paris, but isn't that at least the beginning? Do we have to go either car-free or the apocalypse? Is there nothing in between?
But until the internal combustion engine is replaced by something else, you're
even the electric vehicles. Are you suggesting that they're as blighted because it requires that there are some problematic issues of creating batteries? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that they're polluting the same as everybody else is, and that pollution is ultimately going to wipe out our species.
So you're saying that electric vehicles are just as bad as gas-fueled cars, is that right?
Yes.
So this whole argument about the solar power that people like McKibben are putting forward is wrong?
No, solar power is different in that you can change some of the solar-powered instruments so that they're not lead-based. And people are doing that in countries like Finland and Copenhagen and others. What we have to do is get lead out of the environment. And I'm sorry if this bothers you.
It doesn't bother me, but it does sound a little conspiratorial. But people will have to...
But it's based on fact. Read.
Well, as you say, people can read the book. It's called Saving Ourselves from Big Car. It's by David Obst. Interesting argument, interesting conversation, David. I mean, I'm on your side here, but I think by transforming this into a massive conspiracy theory, I'm not sure how.
No, it's not massive. Let me just stand on one note, okay? It's not a theory because Columbia Business School wouldn't let me just put out a theory.
So why are you? I mean, let's get to this. Why are you the first person to do this? You're saying there's some massive conspiracy that only you realize, and only you are brave enough, and only Columbia University Press is willing to publish. It sounds a little narcissistic.
It does sound strange. And I asked my friend Cy Hirsch, and I asked Woodward and Burns,
but these are old people. These are people who made their names 50 or 60 years ago. Can't you find anyone younger?
Well, I don't know. That's my generation. But I don't know why nobody else has found this. I was shocked when I found it, okay? And I'm not going out to try and make money on this book. I wrote Revenge of the Nerds, okay? So I've got plenty of money.
Yeah,
for
you
the-
also wrote Too Good to Be Forgotten. Maybe you're too good to be forgotten. David Obst, really fun to talk. Interesting new book. Everyone should read it for themselves. Saving Ourselves from Big Car, about how Big Car has destroyed the universe. And if we're to save the planet, we have to get rid of Big Car. Maybe there's something in it. Fascinating, David. Best of luck.